welcome to another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Haskin, here with, a bit of a self-serving episode this week, but you know what? Fuck it, it's my show. And why wouldn't I use a platform to promote my own stuff as well as everyone else's? Just wouldn't make any sense, would it? But no, seriously, I really am really passionate about this album. It was a huge change in more focused direction for me, I want to say. But a little bit of a backstory. While it came out in 2012, it was released actually June 27th. So as I'm recording this, just a little over, 15 or 13 years ago. Geez. I originally started working on this album in 2006. Now, back then, I was really just digging into virtual instruments and getting away from only using sounds from my Korg N264 keyboard sequencer and my Alesis QXR rack module with all the cards. I still have those items, but I was expanding into the world of virtual instruments. And I recall there was a really big sale, and I got a bunch of different things. And then, you get some new toys. You're writing something, you go, oh, I should try this. Oh, you know what? Let me put that on here. And the next thing you know, the album has completely changed the shape from what you had originally intended. That album turned out to be my first entranced album. And it was very synthetic, very kind of somewhat like a Mental Sauna album, but with more percussion and a beat in it, and definitely more electronic sounding, because the main tool that I used on that was a very curious program called Vapor. Now, Vapor was released by Pro Samples. I got it through either East West during one of their sales, and they were also I think distributing for Pro Samples at the time, or I got it through Zero G. But what's interesting is when East West went and re-released all those old things under the new Play program, and they took a lot of those older VSTs and kind of reissued them under that banner, under one special product, which I don't even think is available anymore. Vapor was the only one that was not on it. And I've reached out to them. I've spoken to them about it. They said they don't know anything about Vapor. It wasn't there. So I reached out to Zero G, who would have been the only other place that would have distributed it. And they also don't know anything about it. So I have this very mysterious program that I absolutely love. I also used it on the second Entranced album and various bits and pieces since I purchased it. But it's a wonderful, edgy, cold sounding synth. And I absolutely love it. And that was the main thing that changed the shape of the direction I was taking for when I was starting to work on this Mental Sauna album. So 2006, working with virtual instruments, start working on it. Toys inspired me to change the direction. I have to take responsibility for that because it was totally my choice to let that happen. I could have said, okay, I got these things. They were on sale. I'll play with them later. Let me finish this album first. And I didn't do that. Also, East West Raw played well, I guess would be, East West would have been the distributor. They still have that program. They also have Silk now, which is kind of a spin-off of that. But Raw is a great program. It's a lot of world percussion type stuff. And so I used a lot of the percussion and shakers from Raw throughout Entranced as well. But then at some point I was kind of able to refocus a little bit. I had changed, let's see, how many apartments later would that have been? I guess just, it would have been 2, because I moved from the apartment I wrote Entranced in into another apartment. And then I moved to Chandler, and I think Chandler was out when I was really starting to work on this album. Took a couple of older pieces that I felt would fit the motif of what I was going for very well, and included those. In fact, the title track is one of those. Another track is one I actually wrote in that original apartment I was talking about. But yeah, so eventually I got to the point of where I was starting to put this album together. I didn't really formulate the rules for what a Mental Sauna album should be until I would say I was most of the way done and said, well, maybe on the next one I should, start formulating a certain strategy to it, like taking anything that has a sharp attack, like percussion or piano, and curving that off so you're not getting the attack as much as you are the tonality of what the sound is, and little things like that I started putting together, and that really kind of kicked in more with Mental Sauna 2. But for Mental Sauna 1, I had worked with Kelly on Kindred Spirits. That was our first one that we'd done together. And the original Entrance cover my brother did. When I did the remaster, I had Kelly do a new cover for that, which I really loved. It was an amazing real life picture of a butterfly that looks incredibly cartoonish, but that was a real shot she took on a pool. And the butterfly is unaltered, or moth, whichever it is, I'm not sure. And it's pretty fascinating to look at. But when I started telling her about my concept for Mental Sauna, she was all excited. And I feel like it was one of those things where we both had an opportunity to be really creative. When you've got like a horror album that's based around a house that someone's going to purchase, like Kindred Spirits, you're directed to a certain extent. With Mental Sauna, it was really about just how the album feels. And Kelly likes to hear the music so that she can get a concept for what the cover should be like and how the music associates with it and all that. Came up with this absolutely stunning background. I love it. The idea that I had was that it was going to be, and I was going to do this for the entire series, but we ended up diverting from that by the third one. But it was going to be like a woman who's coming home from an event, whether it be she's dressed for a hard day at work, or she's coming home from some kind of event. And I got my friend Monica, who agreed to be on the cover. She had done some modeling before. We went and picked out a dress. It was around prom time, so a lot of prom dresses were available. So we found something that was suitable for like a really dressy event, and just kind of coming home from that and letting your hair down and just relaxing from the music and kind of coming down from the event and just immersing yourself in this sound bath, or, as I like to call it, a bubble bath for your mind. So that was the original idea. I remember her saying, this is going to take a long time, and the whole shoot was over in less than an hour, because Kelly knows what she wants. And instead of being one of those photographers that takes, 2,000 pictures and has to go through them all and figure out what's the best, Kelly knows what she wants going in and knows how to get it and gets it done very quickly. So it was a very short day. And then we went to lunch, had sushi, which was great. And then I remember on my way home from dropping Monica off, my thermostat in my car blew, and that blew, unfortunate thing, but at least I had already gotten Monica home. I was exhausted from, just all the whirlwind of events and just wanting to get home and get back into the studio and mix the album at that point. But, had to deal with the car first. So it was an eventful day. But in any case, the music and everything, I think, was really matched what I wanted for this album. And as I curtail this into Mental Sauna 2, I think the rules that I defined for it were very helpful, and are rules that I continue to use to this day, now 6 albums into the series. With the Christmas album, it was really easy because the only items that I had in there that would have had a hard strike would just be the piano. Because there's really no harsh percussion or anything on it. There's some percussion on Silent Night, but I rerun that episode every year. And every year I say, maybe I'll do an updated version of the podcast and kind of go through it and see how I feel about it now, all these years later. Because what was that? I moved to Vegas in 2015, and I think it was that year that I put it out. I want to double check that really quick because I don't want to say that if it's wrong. And it is, yeah, that's right. It was 2015. So I moved to Vegas in, what was it? April, I think, of 2015. And I think I won the distribution package in like June and started working on the Christmas album shortly after. So yeah, it's, it was one of those things that it's been a long time. It'll be 10 years. So yeah, I think this would be a good year to revisit that and do a new walkthrough of it. I don't think it needs a new mix, to be honest. I'm very, very happy with the way that album sounds. And it's one of the albums that I actually listen to reasonably frequently, even though it's so specific to Christmas. Sometimes, in the summertime, I'll be like, I just want to hear a couple of tracks. I want to get that Christmas feeling. And I love the blend of sounds that I chose for that. I like the fact that I played real bass on it, even though the bass was not difficult by any means, but I was pretty novice at recording bass and not understanding that when you pull the string, or move the string with your finger, the amount of time it takes for it to make a sound. So when you actually have to strike the note versus when it's going to be heard, it was a very interesting process. So I had to do a little bit of editing on that. I think I could just sit down and do it in one or two takes. But anyway, Mental Sauna 1. So the first track that we're going to get into, and I've got a link to this in the show notes, is a track that I was asked to write for my friend Jessica Marquis, who had written a book called How to Raise Your Unicorn. And it's this really charming book about, starting your own unicorn farm, how to get feed, how to raise them, how to treat them, all kinds of things. And it is such a charming little project. And when she approached me, she said, I want to do this companion CD for people to play while they're reading the book. And I said, of course, I would be absolutely honored to be a part of that. So I kind of just sat down and started playing with some sounds and came up with the concept. And the song is called Peaceful Meadow. She liked it and did put it on the CD. She did a release party for the book and CD, and I got to hear and get my copy of it and hear the other songs that were on there. There's my friend Tommy Schaefer, who's been on the podcast a couple times, has a song on that CD. And also my favorite song on that one, though, is a song called Unicorn Plus by a comedy team called Dangerville. And, it's interesting because the book is very sweet and charming, certainly available for kids. But the concept of their song, and so I've seen them live, and they're an incredibly talented duo, very spontaneous and just incredibly creative. But their concept, and I'm pretty sure they just came up with the idea, recorded the song, and said, "Here you go." It's about it's told from two perspectives. It's told one from the perspective of a child who dreams about the unicorn, and then it's told from the perspective of the unicorn. And eventually the child starts getting into taking sleeping pills so it can spend more time with the unicorn. And then the child's like, screw it, I'm just going to take the whole bottle and we can always be together. And it's such a fascinating comedic tale, the way they do it. I mean, I know it sounds horrible if you're comparing it to a real life thing, but in the song, it's such a sweet thing. And then it has just such a twist, little Twilight Zone type ending. Well, not really Twilight Zone, because it wasn't like a false reality. Well, I guess it kind of was, but usually there's like a twist where the lead is the victim of the twist. And certainly the child was not a victim in this one. They're taking the matters into their own hands. But anyway, just completely unexpected. You don't ever see it coming, but the vocals are amazing. The piano playing is awesome. Just a fantastic song, and one that I just pop on every once in a while and just smile at how great that song is. But anyway, so the first one is Peaceful Meadow, and here is a little bit of that song right now. I'm really proud of that one. Jessica really liked it, which made me happy. Of course, anytime somebody asks you to write a song for them, the biggest thing is making them happy, and it's one that she said that she enjoyed. And yeah, that's one I look back on fondly. Definitely, if wouldn't have fit on any other Mental Sauna album because again, the percussion, the shaker, and I don't generally like to write for flute. I find it a very difficult instrument to EQ well so that it doesn't hit those, ear piercing frequencies. But I thought it really worked on this album or on this song. So didn't mind it so much here. Every once in a while, I'll put it in something. Typically, if I use it, it's going to be on something orchestral. So, if you're writing for a whole orchestra, you can blend in the flute a little bit. It wouldn't stand out as much like this. But I've done some writing for flute, but not my favorite instrument to write for. On this one, I think it works really well. So now we're going to move on to song 2. This one is called Tranquility Tank. And the thing that I envisioned when I was working on the song was I'd never been in one, and I actually hadn't until I was living in Vegas and went to a float spa. But they used to call them sensory deprivation tanks, where basically the water inside has a high salt content, so you float. And they put a dome, over you, so you're in pitch darkness. You can, like if you go to a place where you can do this, a lot of them will have like lights or music you can listen to. But when you're actually trying to mess with people, you would just pitch black, no sound, no nothing, and they would just be in the darkness floating in the water. So it's a really weird thing to experience. I'm glad I tried it. Unfortunately, it was not a good idea for me because I have an issue with my knee, and because the water, I would have expected the water would be warm, but it was maybe a little above room temperature, and that caused me a few days of pain in my knee, being exposed and being damp and all that. So like your leg will float on top of the water, but you're still going to get a little bit wet. And anyway, it was not the greatest thing for me to experience. But for most people, I would say this is something that is a great thing to do if you can just shut your mind off and enjoy the experience. I highly recommend it for people. But for me, this song I called Tranquility Tank. Yeah, there's just a gentleness about that where, again, I probably would do it a little bit differently. I might write the music the same, but I would take some of the attack off of the, the strumming sound, because that does have a bit of a harsh attack to it. But other than that, yeah, that's one of those songs I can just put the headphones on and drift away with, which was exactly the intent. I mean, really, that was the general idea behind the album. I don't really think I nailed that on every song, because I think some of it is a little maybe too interesting, or too much something that you want to pay attention to and hear what's going on with it. And I was able to curb that a little more on subsequent albums, which is really, for this particular series, the idea of it. If I wanted to write something that is interesting and, should be paid attention to, that would be more just like a new age album or instrumental album. But for the purposes of Mental Sauna, the whole idea is to be able to put the headphones on and just kind of drift away, not while you're driving, of course. So this next song is called A Walk Through the Forest. Growing up in Michigan, and I see we have a lot of this here in Oklahoma, in the little bit that I've been out and about, but we have had these like these mini forest areas, like you'd have a baseball diamond and it would be on the edge of just this really thick, lush area filled with trees. And, I don't know if anyone really owned it or if it was city property or what, but there were so many areas like that across the street from my elementary school, where we were actually told not to go because it was dangerous, because supposedly kids went missing from this area. But we had like a huge, like block long forest area right there. And then I don't know if there was a fire or what happened, but I just remember all of a sudden there were no more leaves on the trees, and it was just like tree branches and bark. And maybe somebody burned it down to develop it or something. I don't know. But when I went by last year, I'm trying to remember what I saw now. I can't recall if anything was there or not, because I drove by my old elementary school, Rainbow Elementary, on my way to pass by my childhood home, which I did, and was amazed at how small it looked from the outside. But I'm trying to remember now what's in this area. But in any case, it was a place that we were told to kind of fear. And so we did. At least a lot of us stayed away from it anyway. Some kids actually walked through there because it was easier to get home. Just like the shortest distance. So they would go through there, and I was worried about them, but they never seemed to disappear. So I don't know, probably one thing happened in 1804 and it just became legend. Who knows? But in any case, the idea of these just little random areas of forest got me thinking, and just the idea of kind of walking through them on a sunny day where, there's so many trees that the sun's only poking through and not even shining, making the area really bright. Just a nice, calm, peaceful walk through the forest. And so I called it A Walk Through the Forest. So you can imagine, insects and wildlife, frogs and, little bits of water here and there. Just a very active place, but a place where you can just escape the stresses of the world was the idea. And so there's that again, a little bit of percussion in it as I'm kind of imagining myself walking through the forest, but nothing too shocking or anything that would take you out because it's not a heavy percussion hit. Doesn't have like a shocking attack to it. So that was kind of why I chose that sound. But yeah, a lot of fun. I enjoy that song. Our next song is one that I feel like I've kind of written about a lot, but it's such a beautiful thing. It's kind of hard not to be inspired by it, and just the idea of us going from the pitch black night to the sun rising and starting your day. And this one is called Dawn Comes. Yeah, sometimes I wonder if this wasn't maybe a little too dark sounding for what would go on this album normally, or what the concept of this whole thing is. But I'm not sure, to be honest. Again, this first album was reasonably experimental, and yeah, I don't mind it though, not at all. Our next song kind of goes back to the idea of Tranquility Tank. This is one that I thought would just be perfect for this album, and I definitely stand by that on this one. This is called Dream Spa. So one of the rules that I made at some point, I don't know if it was before or after Mental Sauna 2, but I decided not to put any water sounds in there. I realized on this song that the wave crashes, that crescendo can take you out of the music a little bit. And while this is a reasonably relaxing song, and I think it works well on this album, going forward, I decided that I wouldn't do that. In fact, when I made the Mental Sauna app, I know that people like water sounds. And so I thought it would be good to have them available. But what I wanted to do was have a slider. So the water sound is available, but the slider allows the user to decide how much of the water they want. So you can have no water at all, or you can have a lot of water, and just depends on what you do with that volume slider. I wanted to make it very user friendly and user controllable. Unfortunately, the guy I hired to do it did not do a very good job, and I didn't really have money to market it. But some people seemed to enjoy it, so it was, at the end of the day, it was worth it. But so that is a Dream Spa, and one that, yeah, it's an interesting one. Another one that definitely, after the rules were made going forward, I definitely would have done that song much differently. But I like it the way it is for this album, I think. One of my favorites, though, on this album is next. This is Rêves du Paradis Do, which is as close as I can translate that would be Dreams of Sweet Paradise. It's funny listening to these now and thinking about how different these would have been if I had made the rules before this album. But I like the song. I mean, despite the background that obviously would not have fit the forward rules, but for this song, I think they work really nicely, filling in the atmosphere of it, making it, instead of it just being like an isolated, thin sounding song or just putting a thick synth in the background to, give a little weight to the overall song. I really like the ambience on this one. And I'm glad I wrote it when I did, because like I said, had I written it afterwards, it would be a very different song. And I may not have even been inspired to write the lead line as it is. So yeah, one that definitely makes me happy. And one of the ones that I wrote early on, actually, and is one I've probably listened to one of the most on this album overall. But so that is song 6. There are 18 on this album. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this into 2 episodes and do 9 tracks each. So let's move to track 7. This is a song that is on the album Kindred Spirits, and it is called Seeking Help as it is here, but the version on the album was much shorter, and it was background to the lead character going to seek help with a therapist, and because he thought he was going nuts and not realizing what was actually happening to him. And but I really liked the music, and I thought, boy, this would really fit well with what I'm trying to do with Mental Sauna. And so there you go. Then you just start building it from there. You take out the voiceovers that my wonderful friend Sarah did and I did on that one. You take those out, you extend the song, you add a part, you play around with it a little bit, and you get this version here. There's one thing that I absolutely love about it that kind of ties into Nazareth that I didn't realize until I was done with the song and played it back. But one of my favorite songs on Hair of the Dog is the last song called Please Don't Judas Me. And there is this really cold sounding oscillating synth in the background. And I actually didn't realize it, but I found a very similar sound and used it in this song. And one day after I was done mixing it and listening back to the album, I'm like, wait a minute, that's kind of like Please Don't Judas Me, which just made me smile even more because I love that song. Yeah, this is another one where I used like a flute. It's a shakuhachi, and I use that from East West Raw program and that sound library, and I love the way it is on the sound. Also, I didn't go into any high frequencies, which is where I don't like flute. I like flute in the mid and lower ranges, but once you start getting up into those higher registers, that's where some of those ear-piercing notes can be that I just don't enjoy. And so I tend not to write things that I don't enjoy because, if I don't like it, why would I want to put it out there for other people? Even though I understand tastes are different. I know some very talented flute players, but, it's something that if I specifically think something might be a problem, I don't want to put it out there unless that's the goal, is like a Halloween song. I might want to scare people or, kind of put people on edge with a Halloween song. So I would put that out there, but I never want to make anybody feel uncomfortable with music that isn't designed to be that way, especially on a relaxation album. So, you're talking more mid-range tones on this one, but yeah, the atmosphere on this one is the thing that I've always really, really enjoyed and why I thought it would work well on this album. Now we're going to get to one of the first songs that I wrote for this album. Actually, I was working on a 48-hour film challenge, the second one I had done in my life. The first one I did with the Phoenix Independent Filmmakers Group. And the film was called Campaign Promise. And I was trying to come up with ideas of what I wanted to do. We decided just one piece of music. It was going to be a party. And we decided that because the whole scene was going to be a party, just one piece of music from, covering the film from beginning to end. The film was only going to be a couple minutes long. So really easy to cover. And while I was working out ideas, this was actually one of the first ones I came up with. And while I really liked it, I didn't think it was going to fit the film. So I saved it, just saved all the information so that I could work on it later, finished the film, went back to it, and finished the song. And this is called Restful Slumbers. Yeah, this is another one of my favorite ones for sure. In fact, I remember after I wrote it, I had a trip coming up to Vegas. And I remember, I wanted to make sure that I was able to listen to some of the more recent music that I had been working on and put it on the iPod. And, or no, I don't think I even did I have the iPod yet? I might not have. I might have just put it on a CD and put it in the car. And I just remember, driving through some of those mountain pass, not a mountain pass in the way that you would think like Colorado, but I guess like rocky passes where there's just like these big rock walls that they cut through to make parts of the freeway. And I remember going through some of those and listening to this piece of music thinking, wow, I really, really like this piece. I knew I had to do something with it. And when it came time to put Mental Sauna together, got it out and said, yeah, I definitely think this fits. Again, percussion-wise would be completely different had I written it after the fact. The shaker, not so much, but the brushes and that would be something that would be quite different if I were to have put it on a later album. But yeah, I love the mood of this. I love just that it's not very specific. It's kind of gentle. And then you get this one note that just kind of hangs there for a second. And yeah, it's definitely something that you can enjoy without focusing on too much. And that is really the goal of all these songs, is to just be able to block out the world, enjoy it, but not be so interested that it doesn't help you relax. That was the basic idea, anyway. So I think we're going to wrap up this episode with our halfway point of the album. This is the title track, Mental Sauna. So this was kind of what I envisioned for the album initially, but I didn't want the album to be just, a simple lead pad or something like that. I wanted the songs to have at least some element of character. A song or two like this was okay, but I didn't want the whole album to be like that. And it was a real struggle trying to figure out how far to go, how far not to go, because I hadn't predefined any rules. I just kind of had a general idea of what I wanted the project to be. Obviously, going forward, when I got to Mental Sauna 2, I had a much clearer vision. I think things really took shape there. But honestly, the Christmas album, I think, is the one that really started to bring the final thing home. But that was really easy to do because once I had the sound for the album, all I had to do was do the songs. They all use basically the same instrumentation, basically the same mix. So that album was very easy to make cohesive. I didn't have to think too much once I wrote the first song and defined the sound of the album, because then I just made that as a template, took all the musical data out of it, and then started each song with that template. And there were only, a couple songs that had some additional instruments in it. But a lot of fun nonetheless to work on this album. It definitely started me on a very interesting path. I've done did 6 albums and apps so far. Got some videos on YouTube for some of these things, most of which I filmed in Vegas or Newport Beach, California. And a lot of what I filmed was at the Bellagio, where they had, like a water installation or something that, could be relaxing. And I would just set up the tripod and have no idea what song I was going to connect it to. But I would record for 5-6 minutes, give myself plenty of footage, and then, go back home and put it on my drive and either forget about it or make the video that night, And so I've still got a bunch of footage on my drive that I'm just kind of placing out there here and there as I get time and as I think about it. But yeah, a lot of fun. And these songs, they have a great deal of meaning to me. I think about with each one what apartment I was living in, what the weather was like when I wrote it, being able to immerse myself in the music and not have to think too much about it, which was also nice. I didn't have to think about riffs and, harmonies and all that kind of thing, because it really wasn't what the album was going to be. And so it was a very interesting departure and experiment as a composer, because it was not the kind of music, even with all the instrumentals, because those have beats and melodies and percussion and, all kinds of layers and things in there. And this was very much just play what you feel, enhance it, give it a little bit of depth, and you're done, And then, obviously there were other songs that I had written previously, like Peaceful Meadow, that just fit in with the album. So yeah, it was a great experiment, very pivotal album for me in my career. Out of the 32 albums I've done so far, I would say this is one of the most important, because this then set me on that direction. And I'm a big fan of, a lot of the music I've written for these albums. So anyway, I think that will wrap up our episode for this week. I'll be back. I'll probably next month. I don't, I want to break up a little bit of my own personal promotion and do some other things in between. So probably next month, I'll do the second part of this. And I hope that you guys tune in. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Links are in the show notes for, places that you can get it. You can go to my website, to the Mental Sauna page, which is also in the show notes. And that will link you to all, like Amazon, iTunes, or Apple Music, depending on which one you work with. Also, you can stream it there. It's on my BandCamp page. I always prefer people buy from BandCamp because I get the most residuals from BandCamp as opposed to Amazon or iTunes or anything like that. But the thing I like about iTunes or Apple Music is when people leave a review or at least a star rating and, let people know that, hey, there's something out here that you might enjoy. That definitely helps artists a lot. I know people talk about it a lot, but it's because a lot of people don't do it. So, hopefully with enough repetition and enough asking, people will go and at least leave a rating. That would be very much appreciated. But I also just appreciate you guys listening to the episode. I hope that you enjoy the music. I hope you'll tune in next month for part 2. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Remember to check out Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, my Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday show. I'm not sure when this will come out, so I would imagine I'll be working my way either through Come Taste the Band or Perfect Strangers. We'll see depending on where this ends up releasing. So you guys take care, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.